The library was my space, and there was just so much.
To the Harbor Grace excursion with the boys to have a time.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you all coming out. This is my second year hosting, and I'm very happy to do so. The Toronto Book Awards, I mean, just a little bit about me. 15 years ago, I came here from Montreal, and, for the first 5 years, I was very much a Montrealer. That's what I told people. I was like, I'm in Toronto right now, but who knows if I'll stick around. It was sort of, I was in a transient phase, I thought. And then 5 years after that, I could say I'm a Torontonian, but I would trail off on the Torontonian. I wouldn't say it proudly. And then finally, in the last 5 years, I've been able, my kids have been born here. I get phenomenal working opportunities like this one here. My Toronto Blue Jays occasionally make me very proud, as they will in an hour from now, I hope, And finally, 5 years ago, I could say I am a Torontonian. And it's a little, I appreciate that. It is a little bit like standing up at a Torontonians Anonymous meeting and admitting that you have this problem. But I'm not comparing alcoholism to living in Toronto. This metaphor fell apart quite a while ago. I do take every day in this city one day at a time. I will say that. You never know what's coming. But let me talk to you about these awards. I don't know if you know that these are we could say these are historic at this point. They started, Toronto Book Awards were started by City Council in 1974. And they were started to honor books of literary merit that feature our city in a starring or supporting role. And in the 70s, I don't think anybody on City Council could have imagined the explosion in talent and the explosion of Toronto stories that would have come to fruition after that. When the prize began, there were 2 to 3 dozen entries regularly. And now this year, our jury tackled a stack of 78 submissions. Right, which speaks volumes about this city and about our literary community here, but it also speaks volumes about our jury and how much reading they've done and how much they need to rest their eyes. So I will let's have a nice round of applause to our jury. Some of them are here. I'm going to call them out. Our jury is a collection of superb writers, poets, book lovers, and we were honored to work with them this year. I know some of them are here with us this evening. So if you hear your name, please stand up and give the audience a wave. Sam Hyatt, are you here? Well, you let Sam know that there was one woo in the audience, that he should really... Sam is a Toronto-based literary agent, president, and CEO of the Rights Factory. In the past 2 decades, Sam and his team have secured hundreds of book deals that have resulted in several bestsellers. Sophie G. Is Sophie G here? Okay, you let Sophie know that we looked around at each other and hoped that she was here. Yes, Chris? She's in England. Great excuse. One of the better excuses that I've heard. Sophie is a Trinidadian Canadian author. Her debut novel, Wildfires, published by HarperCollins, was shortlisted for the 2023 Toronto Book Award and several other literary prizes. G has been a writer-in-residence, visiting fellow, and a scholar at the University of Oxford. Okay, story checks out, where she completed her master's in creative writing. Wanda Nanabush. Is Wanda here? Hi, Wanda. Wanda is here, everyone. We can give Wanda a nice round of applause. Wanda is an Anishinaabe Kwe writer, curator, and community organizer from Beausoleil First Nation. Based in Toronto, Wanda won the 2023 Toronto Book Award, with her co-author and editor, Georgiana Uljarek, for their book, Moving the Museum, which chronicles some of the groundbreaking work at the Art Gallery of Ontario, where Wanda was the inaugural curator of Indigenous art. Dawn Oravec. Is Dawn here? Dawn, nice to see you, Dawn. Dawn has worked in the cultural sector for over 25 years, including a stint with the Writers' Trust of Canada, where he was the Director of Fund Development from 2005 to 2012. Dawn served on the board of Toronto's Word on the Street. He's the past president of the board of directors of Project Bookmark Canada, and he's a co-founder and past chair of the board of directors for the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction. David Silverberg. David, are you in the house? David? Hello, David. Nice round of applause for David. Poet, spoken word performer, theater artist, journalist, and writing coach. David founded and managed Toronto Poetry Slam at the Drake Hotel, one of my favorite events in this city. Helped me identify as a Torontonian, David. I'm not just saying that. It was a fantastic event. He was the artistic director of 2 Canadian festivals of spoken word. His poetry has appeared in ARC, Descant, In Living Hyphen, and many more publications. Descant, is that the right? I'm not familiar with that word, unfortunately. I should have spent some time with it. But without the tireless efforts of writers and readers like this year's jury, the Toronto Book Awards could not exist. The grand prize has been won by a staggering pantheon of local authors, and that includes Timothy Findlay, Margaret Atwood, Robertson Davies, Michael Ondaatje, Camilla Gibb, Dion Brand, David Bezmozgis, Kamal El Soleili, Michael Redhill, Austin Clark, among many others. Yeah, I think so. Just the one person, but I think you had the right intentions there. This year, another thing to clap for here, the City of Toronto was able to double the prize money attached to the Toronto Book Awards. That's right. Finalists received $2,000, and the winning author will be awarded $20,000. So thank you to the City of Toronto. That's a line in the budget item we can all get behind. Now, Toronto is a city of many stories, layered, vibrant, deeply personal. You take one ride on a TTC, you take your headphones out, you got yourself a story. Keep your eyes open. There's stories everywhere in this city. And the shortlisted books this year that you are going to hear about reflect all of that beautifully. They explore themes of migration, resilience, memory, and belonging. They show us that the city is not just a setting, but a character within the stories. Each of the shortlisted authors has offered a unique lens on Toronto, whether through fiction, memoir, poetry, or social commentary. Their work captures the complexity of our neighborhoods, the struggles and triumphs of our communities, and the quiet moments that define life in this city. These stories help us see Toronto more clearly, more compassionately, something that we can all use more of in our day-to-day life. These works are not just set in Toronto, they are Toronto. And so to all the authors, I want to say thank you to all of you for your courage and your creativity and your commitment to telling Toronto stories. You help us imagine a city that is more inclusive, more compassionate, and more connected. So congratulations to all of you just before we begin this event. A nice round of applause for our authors who are here. And thank you for making Toronto a city worth reading about. So this year's jury had an especially difficult task, was unable to whittle the mountain of submissions down to just 5 finalists as we typically do. So we've made an exception and permitted them to settle on a short list of 6. Let's take a deeper dive into these excellent books. Our first finalist is author Andre Alexis. Andre is the author of many award-winning books, including 2015's 15 Dogs, which was shortlisted for the Toronto Book Award and won the Giller Prize, the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize, and Canada Reads. And here's what our jury had to say about Andre's shortlisted collection of short stories, Other Worlds, published by McClelland and Stewart. Andre Alexis's speculative fiction, Other Worlds, is a feat of imagination and connection across time and place. Alexis travels the tributaries that connect Toronto to the Caribbean and southern Ontario while collapsing the past and future into a present imbued with the wisdom of loss, love, and the earth. Even though a horse speaks and a medicine man is reincarnated, the otherworldly in his stories feel ordinary and thus revelatory. A balm for a grieving and seeking soul, Alexis's latest collection of short stories is by turns philosophical and emotional, with the grace of humor about the human condition. To read an excerpt from Other Worlds, please welcome Andre Alexis.
Persongling, an appreciation. To do good without intending it merits no reward, though it is still good. To do evil without intending it merits no punishment, though it is still evil. Po Song Ling, Tales from a Chinese Studio. Having been a much honored lecturer at the University of Toronto, Medard Alboui retired at the age of 70 in order to find an apprentice to whom he could pass on all of the learning of medicine, both light and dark, that he had accumulated in a lifetime of study. This search of his was unexpectedly arduous. For one thing, Professor Alboui, no longer affiliated with the university, found it difficult to attract suitable candidates. Those he approached, including some of his own best students, turned him down when they learned he would be teaching superstition. And just as disobliging to them that they'd received no university credits for listening to him. Tired of looking for a candidate among the university students, Professor Alboui let it be known that he would teach anyone, educated or not, who showed the will and aptitude to learn. Word of this got out, but although he interviewed a number of candidates, none was suitable, most having in mind that they would learn to punish their enemies with voodoo or obia and then quit. Among these candidates, there was a subject who wished to simply pay him to punish his enemies. So, after a year of looking, Medard, now simply Mr. Alboui, gave up his quest for an apprentice, feeling with some bitterness that he would sooner cut off a finger than share any of the precious things he'd carefully culled from a life's work. Perversely, it was when he abandoned his search that the city seemed to realize what it had missed. Candidates, serious candidates, some of whom he might have accepted just weeks before, petitioned him during the day, asking to be considered for apprenticeship. But having decided against taking on an apprentice, Medard set an impossible requirement for anyone wishing to learn from him. They were to bring something dead back to life in front of him. He would, he said, gladly mentor anyone who could do this. There being none who could reanimate the dead, the number of candidates fell to 0. All the hopeful gave up, and Mr. Alboui was free to study, write, gather medicines, and practice the medical arts he wished in peace. One evening, as he was writing down the medicinal effects of willow sap, ground cumin, and warfarin, he heard a faint tapping as if the wind-blown branch of a tree were rhythmically ticking on his door, then stopping, then ticking again. As he lived on the 8th floor of the apartment, the tree branch was unlikely. On opening his door, he was faced with a tall woman, 5'11", who was dressed in a gray two-piece suit, white shirt, and black blundstones. She was light-skinned and slim. Her white hair, a modest pompadour, lay on top of her head like a kind of wing, while the sides and back were buzz-cut. Her outfit was distracting, but something about her spirit put him at ease. She looked at him for a moment before respectfully offering him a white plate on which a mushroom omelet lay. "This is for you, Mr. Alboui," she said. And when he'd taken the plate, she stepped back. "What do you want me to do with this?" he asked. The plate was warm and the omelet smelled good, but he was not hungry. "The mushrooms were dead," she said, "but the omelet is alive. I'm thinking of becoming your apprentice."
Next, we have Rosa Nozari, a writer. A writer with a fan club in the 4th row, and a larger fan club to follow, I'm sure. Writer, artist, and therapist who's based in Toronto. Her work weaves together writing and visual art to tell stories of wounding, healing, and community. Rosa's shortlisted work is All the Parts We Exile, published by Knopf Canada. Here's what the jury had to say about the book. All the Parts We Exile is Rosa Nozari's warm, moving, and poignant coming-of-age story. The author presents Toronto as a unique and diasporic anchor from which she comes to grips with her family's trauma and her own, while finding her place in the world as a queer Muslim woman. Rosa's voice is both raw and tender, compelling and confessional. You can't help but love her and cheer her on to overcome and reconcile her challenges and obstacles to ultimately find herself, her art, and her place in the world. To give us a small taste of All the Parts We Exile, please welcome Rosa Nozari.
That year, I begged Mom to let me come to a sofre with her, and she agreed, letting me skip school for it. So little had changed when it came to boys and their whispering judgments about me. Having seen my mother turn to Muslim practices in her own hard times, I did the same, hoping it would grant me some ease. And by grant me some ease, I mean make me pretty. When I was growing up, Mom rarely prayed, and if she did, it was during times of great hardship, like when someone was sick or struggling back home. The one Muslim practice we consistently attended was a sofre nazri. Called a sofre for short, it was a gathering of women centered around food and prayer. Food was a ceremonial offering to spirits and Shia saints. Those hosting and attending would often arrive with a request already in their heart, hoping the spirits or saints would carry it to Allah for an answer. At the door, we took our shoes off and were greeted by a group of aunties, some strangers, some family. We greeted each of them in the room, bowing our heads as a sign of respect and acknowledgement. To those we knew more dearly, 2 kisses on the cheek, or depending on where they were from in Iran, sometimes 3. There were varying degrees of religiosity in the room. Some women prayed 5 times a day, some rarely. Some wore hijabs and beautiful tunics. Some, like my mom, were dressed casually in jeans and a long-sleeve shirt, along with a hijab in hand for prayer. In the kitchen, another set of aunties were lined up, waiting to stir something simmering in a large silver pot on the stove. I waited with Mom in line as she greeted others. When it was her turn, she handed me the spoon and said, "Think of what you want and stir." I want boys to be nice to me, I thought. I worried that wasn't clear enough for God. Started to list their names, Hassan, Farhad, Puya. I then worried that could be any Hassan, Farhad, and Puya. So I started to visualize them as I stirred, wishing for them to find me pretty. My mother waited quietly until I was done, unbothered by how long it took me. We crammed into the living room of 30 or so women sitting on chairs and around the sofre. It took longer than usual to choose my spot, waiting to find the perfect kachi to sit near. A kachi was a sweet dish with a thick pudding-type consistency. They were laid around the sofre in styrofoam bowls with a plate covering each one. When you opened the lid, it presented you with a visual that some with special teachings were able to read, similar to reading the bottom of a Turkish coffee. On the sofre was also feta, bread, parsley, and turnips. Mom and I put our hijabs on and waited. When we were all seated, one woman began reading the surahs in the Quran. The rhythmic nature of how it was read reminded me of a sad melody. I followed the other women, never knowing what to do. When some opened their palms on their thighs, mine opened. When they lifted their palms to the sky, I did the same. When some rocked, I rocked. Eventually, the women began crying. Not just any crying, but something deep, guttural. My mom, too, tears streamed down her face, napkins passed from one side of the sofre to another, and I cried too. If there was anywhere to cry, it was here. It was here that you could unburden yourself of the pain of living. It was here that others would rock with you, would cry with you, would fall apart. There was no shame here, only radical honesty. Soon the whole room hummed with a symphony of sadness, crumpled tissues, the shaking in their chest as tears streamed uncontrollably, that hiccuping gasp when the snot started coming. When the prayers were done, the requests for salavat rolled in. A prayer for the children living in poverty, a prayer for my brother, a prayer for my child, a prayer for my neighbor. When the prayers and storytelling were over, women quickly took their kachi over to an auntie, one who often attended. She was one of the few people who could read a kachi. First, she opened up the kachi and gazed at it as if piecing together what it was revealing to her. Then she would explain what she saw and what the person needed to do, if anything, to arrive into their hopes. For some, it was to host their own sofre, while for others, it was to light a certain number of candles with heart focus and intentionality. When the auntie opened my kachi, her eyes widened. "Look how beautiful," she exclaimed. "Allah is written on your kachi." Thank you.
Between the mushroom omelets and the sochi and the coffee and the pudding, most people are going to be rushing to a restaurant right after this, I imagine. Next, we have Maggie Helwig, writer, longtime social justice activist. Yes. and also an Anglican priest who has been the rector of the Church of St. Stephen in the Fields in Kensington Market since 2013. Maggie is the author of 15 books and chapbooks, most recently Girls Fall Down, which was shortlisted for the Toronto Book Award in 2012. Regarding Maggie's shortlisted book, Encampment, Resistance, Grace, and an Unhoused Community, published by Coach House Books, our jury had this to say. Encampment is the book for anyone who has ever looked at an unhoused settlement and wondered, how does this happen in a country as wealthy as Canada, in a city as vibrant and seemingly compassionate as Toronto? Encampment is the chronicle of an unhoused community on the doorstep of St. Stephen's in the Field Anglican Church in Kensington Market. Maggie Helwig, the church pastor, becomes a champion of the encampment in her midst and details in exquisite prose the plight of the individuals who make up this unhoused community. It's a difficult book to put down once you start reading and impossible to forget once you finish. Helwig's exceptional storytelling compels us to care. You will never look at an unhoused community the same way again. To read from Encampment, please welcome Maggie Helwood.
This book is deeply answerable to the lives and realities of very real and present people. And I can't not talk about the situation which is facing us today. At noon today, I was informed by the Ontario Fire Marshal that the encampment at St. Stephen's, which currently houses about 10 people, will be cleared tomorrow. This is less than 24 hours' notice. It is a rushed and chaotic process which violates the city's encampment protocol in a number of respects. When the fire marshal tried to explain to me why this was so urgent, one of the things which she instanced was neighborhood complaints. There will be 10 people who do not have a home to go to tomorrow night. They are people who in some cases have had a home in our yard for 4 years. Some of them are people with whom we are actively working on housing plans. If our contact with them is disrupted because of this eviction, those housing plans could be short-circuited. If you want to come and support us tomorrow, we're at College in Bellevue. We anticipate, although we have not been specifically told, that the city action will probably start about 9 a.m. and unroll over the course of the day. We don't know exactly what will happen. We don't know why this is happening right now. But that is the real context. It is difficult for me to read from a book which is about where things stood over a year ago when we're dealing with this today. But there is a section at the very end of the book. It's very short, and I think it will address to some extent what we are dealing with. One Saturday in early August, as we were setting up for an outdoor service in Bellevue Square Park, Jeff asked me, "Do you remember that ship we built? Like the time we built that ship in the churchyard out of old skids, do you remember?" I didn't remember exactly such a thing, but Jeff had created any number of constructions, so I nodded. "Well," he said, almost whispering, "I heard they dug it up 2 million years in the future, and it was completely the same. It was perfect. That's pretty amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I said. "It really is. 2 million years in the future. Just think about it. That ship we built, completely the same." And while we may not have built a ship out of wooden skids exactly, we did build a little ark in the yard for a while, a place of refuge against the flood. a place where we preserved what we could. In some unimaginable future, somewhere the other side of the coming floods and the fire next time, will someone remember it? Will someone dig it up and find it still perfect? I cannot say that this may not be true.
Our next author is Tanya Talaga. Tanya is of Anishinaabe and Polish descent and was born and raised in Toronto. She's a member of Fort William First Nation and the acclaimed author of the national bestseller Seven Fallen Feathers, among other works. For more than 20 years, Tanya was a journalist at the Toronto Star and is now a regular columnist at the Globe and Mail. Tanya Talaga is the founder of Makwa Creative, a production company formed to elevate Indigenous voices and stories. Our jury had this to say about Tanya's shortlisted book, The Knowing, published by HarperCollins Canada. The Knowing is Tanya Talaga's deeply moving, well-structured tale of a compelling personal history and a national crime. Talaga weaves the history of residential schools, Toronto psychiatry during the Depression, with her search to name, locate, and honor her ancestors. With her, we embark on the path from unmarked graves to healing the circle of community as we are led through the thickets of colonialism, made visible in Talaga's kitchen table style narration. Tears will be shed, but ultimately it is the power of the ancestors that forms the heart of this important book. Please join me in welcoming Tanya Talaga.
I'm going to read from the very beginning of The Knowing, and apologies if you've come to any of the other Toronto Book Awards and you've heard me talk about this. It's kind of my favorite reading, though. So, I throw my arms out wide and begin to spin in a circle. With each turn, my fingertips touch the inner circumference of all of creation. As I spin, I am the center. The 4 stages of life, the 4 directions of the medicine wheel, bound together by sacred laws and ceremonies. The Anishinaabe believe all life is connected to the tree people, the stones, the earth, air, water, and animals. All have spirits. We are all part of the circle of creation. The 4 directions of the medicine wheel whirl with me as I spin, from the east to the south, and from the south to the west, and then from the west to the north. We enter our human life through the yellow east door, the same color as the rising sun, and we gain knowledge as we strengthen into youth and adulthood. And the sun glows so strong on our journey through the red south door. As it sets, darkness falls, but it leaves enough light to shine on our elder path as we reach the black west door. We share and grow, and then we die with the coming of winter in the white north door. The cycle begins again as we continue to whirl. The circle is a beat of the human heart, the sound of the drum. This is a movement of life and of time itself. The end is the beginning. Chapter 1, The Knowing. Annie Carpenter lies in an unmarked grave just south of a giant blue and yellow IKEA, directly off one of the busiest thoroughfares in North America, the Gardiner Expressway, part of the Queen Elizabeth Way, which cuts west and east across the city of Toronto. It feels like an area you drive through to get somewhere else, not a destination. I have lived in Toronto my entire life, born and raised in this city of immigrants, a city built on the land snatched from the Mississaugas of the Credit by the Toronto Purchase Agreement of 1805. The British, looking to secure trade routes and the safety of the growing city of York, as Toronto was then known, entered into a now disputed treaty with the Mississaugas, an Anishinaabe group of families who had made their home here for centuries. The Anishinaabe say they were duped by the British and that the agreement they signed was blank. They said it did not, in fact, cede to the Crown any land much less the area on which the cities of Toronto and Vaughan are built, their concrete office towers and condos pocking the land with thick, crusty pavement. Our peoples have walked on this land, now trapped beneath the city's hard shell of concrete, asphalt, and steel, for tens of thousands of years. The soil remembers our footsteps. I have traveled along this highway too many times to say, heading in and out of the city, ferrying my children to Hamilton and back, to see their father's relations. How many times have I taken this route to get to the airport or go to Sherway Gardens, a giant shopping mall smack in industrial West End Toronto? All this time, until 5 weeks before writing this, I did not know that I was driving past my great-great-grandmother's grave. How cruel reality is. She was right there, all this time, since 1937. Gone from us, from her language, from her Innu, Omashkego Cree family, and so very far away from the water that knew her, the giant Albany River and James Bay Basin. Gone from her clothes, her beads, and her rocking chair. Gone from the sweet smell of burning sage, the softness of a floor of firs, and the guttural sounds of a flock of geese making their way south in the brilliant blue sky. Gone from her children, from the beautiful embrace of a gaggle of grandchildren, my grandmother, Margaret among them, who used to listen to her as she sang the sweet sounds of 10,000 generations of our families. We carry our knowledge through our songs, never written down. Our knowledge was lifted and passed from one to the other through our singing, through the beat of a drum, the circular sound of a drum beat, the sound of a human heart. She used to sing as she rocked. This is my grandmother's only memory of her. She said Annie spent hours singing softly and rocking. She did not stop. Oh, Annie, what happened to you? What did you see? How did you feel when you were sent 2,500 kilometers from your home, away from everything familiar, away from your way of life, and shoved into, of all horrific places, a lunatic asylum? Did you even know what kind of place it was? It must have been disorienting, frightening, as if your world had ended. Were you trapped in a dingy cell? Did you comprehend any of what the whites said to you as they poked and prodded your body, strapped you on a gurney, and locked you away? They spoke a language that did not come from you, in sounds that did not come naturally from your lips and that were not understood by your ears. Did they torture you? Hurt you? Did it not matter anymore because this physical pain was nothing compared to what it felt like to be ripped away from your children, your home and family, everything you knew? We looked for you since the 1930s, the decade you were taken away, never to return. Your grandson, Hank Bowen, my grandmother Margaret's brother, led the charge, constantly searching for traces of who we were. Do you remember him? He was a loner, a hunter, a lover of the sounds of the bush and the sting of the drink. He nearly died in a Thunder Bay tuberculosis sanitarium, kept hidden away for years as his lungs suffered and heaved from the bacterial infection that ate at his insides. He never settled, never stopped trying to figure out exactly where you were and who you were. His brown collapsible file folder stuffed with papers, maps, letters, and notes was never far from his grasp. Insides were places carefully circled on photocopied maps of all the First Nations, communities nestled deep in the boreal forests and freshwater lakes of northern Ontario, stretching from the Manitoba border to Hudson Bay and James Bay, Nibamatong, Lansdowne House, Whitefish Bay, Long Lake 58. Could she be from here? From these places? Where did her blood come from? His quest was relentless. It consumed him. Miigwech.
Our next shortlisted author is Vinh Nguyen. Vin is a writer and educator whose work has appeared in a myriad of literary publications. He's a nonfiction editor at the New Quarterly, where he curates an ongoing series on refugee, migrant, and diasporic writing. Diasporic writing, I'm going to stick to that. In 2022, he was a Lambda Literary Fellow in Nonfiction for emerging LGBTQ writers. Here's what our jury had to say about Vin's shortlisted book, The Migrant Rain Falls in Reverse, published by HarperCollins Canada. Decades after fleeing to Toronto from post-war Vietnam with his family, Vinh Nguyen blurts out, "I want to go back." And so begins Nguyen's recollection of his past, his childhood house in Vietnam, the many refugee camps in Thailand, and his father, who could never make it to Canada to join the family. Nguyen's profound meditations on home and displacement depict a poetic, heart-gripping account of living with uncertainty, rewriting the past to come to terms with the present, and existing between belonging and non-belonging. Nguyen's memoir offers a bare-souled window into the lives we as Torontonians pass on our way to work, sit next to on the train, or bump into in an elevator. A portrait of life that shows us how many definitions being Canadian can truly hold. Vin, welcoming you to the stage to share a piece from The Migrant Rain Falls in Reverse.
I'm unsure when the idea took hold, but when it did, it wouldn't let go. Finding the refugee camp again became an obsession, wrapping itself around my consciousness like tendrils reaching for the elusive January light. I would lie in bed at night, my eyes closed, and map out the place in my mind. Our family's cramped living quarters behind a ditch by the red dirt road next to the soccer field across from the commissary. The large trees with hibiscus flowers blossoming in the sun. The tent where films were projected on hanging canvas. Rusty buses that chartered refugees away to new lives. When sleep finally overtook me, I would dream of the open sky folding in on itself, children roaming through curtains of monsoon rain, my mother's slight electric figure standing in line for rations, me a lightning rod jolting awake. With the glare of the city sneaking in through the cracks in the blinds, I sometimes couldn't tell if I'd made up the past, if the refugee camp in Thailand was ever real. It had been decades since my mother, my siblings, and I fled post-war Vietnam and arrived at the refugee camps in Thailand, where we were processed by the United Nations and granted asylum. In a black and white photograph documenting our first moments as refugees, my mother holds up a card with the number BT001401. Her lips are pressed together, sealing tension. Shallow eyes bear exhaustion, like something inside her had been snuffed out. Clipped to each of our collars is a number from 1 to 5, my mother first and me the youngest last. No one is smiling, but everyone except me is dutifully looking straight into the camera to be captured on film. I'm errant, my face turned slightly to the side, eyes downcast. Either I'm a child who can't follow directions, or I'm already on a path away from the narrative given to me, searching for pieces of a broken story. Every time I look at this photo, I want to reassure this new family that they will be all right, that they are safe. I think of my father, missing from the image, anxious to leave Vietnam and join us at the camp. He was still alive when this photo was taken. One day, remembering this photo, I Googled Panat Nikham, the camp we stayed in the longest, the final one in a series of camps. The first result I got was a Google Maps location that told me it was in Chonburi province, not far from Bangkok. In its place now were newly built military barracks and a government office surrounded by large patches of brown and green fields. I scrutinized the curling shapes of the Thai script and zoomed in on the tops of buildings that looked like tiny Monopoly pieces. I followed a link to eBay where someone was selling a t-shirt with an image of a young woman carrying a child on her back. Underneath the image were the words, Panat Nikham Refugee Camp, Thailand, 1993. I put in a bid, but ended up losing to someone else. I wondered who this person was, living a parallel nostalgia to mine. I downloaded a 64-page master's thesis by an anthropologist in California and read about identity, community, and resistance inside Panat Nikham. When I finished, I thought to myself, is this what it was like? I felt grateful that someone had documented the camp with such scholarly expertise. I found a technical report on the groundwater supply for the camp and learned the location of wells, the quality of bedrocks, and the amounts of diluvial deposits. I joined a Facebook group connecting friends who lived in and transited through the area. Late at night, I lurked at posts by strangers looking for people they once knew or reminiscing about a life that's no longer theirs. I went from one blog to another and saw images of women washing at cisterns, men with their arms around each other, groups of children giving thumbs up for the camera, rows and rows of tiny makeshift buildings. All this looking fueled my desperate imagination. I didn't tell anyone that the refugee camp had taken over my waking life and animated my dream one. I was afraid my desire would become a broken spell if I spoke it. I was afraid my desire would become a broken spell. If I spoke my longing out loud, surely all traces of the camp would disappear, including my fragmented memories. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least is author Chika Stacy Oriwa. Currently, yes, a fan club is growing. Currently a resident doctor in psychiatry at the University of Toronto, Oriwa is a graduate of the school's Temerty Faculty of Medicine, where she was valedictorian of her year. Upon entry into medical school, Oriwa discovered that she was the only black student in a class of 259. That disparity is the jumping off point for Chika's shortlisted memoir, Unlike the Rest, A Doctor's Story, published by HarperCollins Canada. Our jury had this to say about Chika's book. With a poetic flair and stories that will make you laugh and cry, Dr. Chika Stacy Oriwa has written a powerful and compelling book with Unlike the Rest, A Doctor's Story. Sharing her arduous journey to hurdle systemic racial barriers at medical school, while also infusing her story with poignant musings on motherhood, friendships, and spoken word poetry, she reveals nuances of healthcare and the education system that many of us don't see. Please welcome Dr. Chika Stacy Oriwa to read a brief excerpt from Unlike the Rest.
So I've dedicated this book to my loved ones, to my babies, Azena and Nkiru, my forthcoming baby, Zikora. But I want to dedicate this passage in particular to my patients here in Toronto who have given me the opportunity to work as a doctor, the privilege of being their doctor. And this excerpt that I'm going to share is a composite of my patients for medical legal reasons, but I wanted to put a content warning that it does explore some pretty difficult themes of suicide. And so please take care of yourself if you need to, either beforehand or during. I've had enough, said my patient, Maud, as her torso swayed back and forth, her middle-aged body threatening to collapse with every moment. She appeared to undulate as if her limbs were submerged in molasses, yet somehow she was besting gravity's attempts to pull her towards the floor of the psychiatric emergency room. The smell of liquor gripped me from the doorway while she retched periodically and heaved her upper body towards the bucket that sat by her feet. The hand sanitizer dispenser near the entrance was intentionally empty, given the history of some patients drinking whatever was available to get an effective and inexpensive buzz. I caught her glancing intermittently at the container and wondered what factors could erode a person's spirit to that degree of desperation. Of course, I understood theoretically that avoiding the painful and potentially fatal experience of withdrawal was a significant driver, but surely there was a tale of being dealt an unfair hand by life that long preceded this moment. Wefts of matted hair were slicked to Maud's forehead by the thick evening heat. Dribbles of sweat beaded at her temples, slipping down her chin onto her shoulders. Some formed a stream that met like a confluence of rivers with her tears, which ran hot along her cheeks. A tartan of fresh and healed scars lined down Maud's arms, alluding to a tortured life beyond what I could glean in the electronic chart review and collateral that I had acquired before the assessment. Some stories, I learned, can only be felt and not told. We sat in the dimly lit enclave, a thick curtain separating us from the wails and groans of the packed psychiatric emergency department. Maud was one of many that night who were flagged for assessment of suicidal ideation. She sat amongst others experiencing manic episodes, substance withdrawal, and an acute exacerbation of excessive compulsive disorder, to name just a few of the frequently observed psychiatric presentations. It was my first abbreviated call shift as a third-year medical student on my psychiatry rotation, one that had started shortly after a chaotic day on the inpatient psychiatry wards several floors above. This kind of call shift required me to work in the emergency room until close to midnight before being relieved of my duties and summoned back to the wards in the morning. I felt exhausted, but not with the kind of existential exhaustion that resided within Maud. At this stage in my life, which now included my stint in medical school as a clinical clerk, I thought I had seen almost every kind of person on the spectrum of inebriation, from tipsy teenagers in high school to wasted friends during undergraduate orientation, to wedding guests passed out on chairs, sapped by a night of dancing and disinhibition. But I had yet to encounter this unique mixture of intoxication and determination to end one's life. "I'm ready to die," said Maud, as she laid bare her extensive plans, to see what awaited her on the other side of a life replete with suffering. Her plan was detailed, with directives on asset donations to charities and how to inform her estranged children of her passing. A stockpile of prescription medications was stashed under her mattress, waiting to be ingested while she soaked in a warm bath. All she ever wanted to do, she said, with a glazed stare and reddened eyes, was make the world a better place than how she had found it. If she couldn't do it in life, a failure that she deeply lamented, she would ensure that she did it in death. She had started to run a bath but fallen asleep in her subsidized apartment just hours earlier. She, like so many others in the room that night, was brought into the emergency department by police, and when they found her on the bathroom floor as the tub overflowed. Maud didn't want an admission or an assessment. She had a singular request from our team in the psychiatric emergency department: to be surrounded by calm, to listen to her favorite jazz record, and to ensure that her plan was executed with precision. Most importantly, she stressed, was the donation of her grandfather's telescope. Maud hoped that the recipient, if ever they felt the darkness closing in, would look through the telescope into a starry night sky and capture all the light they could not see otherwise. This practice had brought Maud solace in the bleakest of moments, and when the sparkle of a distant celestial body no longer brightened her spirits, she was convinced it was time to let go. Our job as a psychiatry team, on the other hand, was to do all that we could to extend and improve the quality of her life, to convince her that her purpose on earth was greater than all the pain that she was suffering, to let her know that she wasn't alone. Although every shred of evidence she had convinced her that she was, to persuade her that the darkness that consumed her was likely escapable, and if we could buy the time to find the right combination of therapy, medication, addiction support, and social stabilization, to give us an hour, a day, a week, a year, to make it to tomorrow, to do what no doubt felt in the moment like the impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chica. Well, folks, we're almost there. It is my pleasure now to present all the shortlisted authors with a scroll of recognition. I'm going to ask Lisa Radavora to come up here and help me hand these out. Another round of applause for Lisa so that Sergio's not the only one clapping. Right? Please come to the stage and accept your finalist prize, Andre Alexis. And then we'll ask you to stay on the stage, and we'll get a photo op of all the authors at the same time. Our next finalist is Rosa Nozari. Next up is Maggie Helwig. Please welcome back our next finalist, Tanya Talaga. Please welcome back Vin Nguyen to the stage. And please welcome Chika Stacy Oriwa to the stage. Okay, we'll take a picture with the group. This is an incredible short list. One more time, let's give a round of applause to the books, The Other Worlds, All the Parts We Exile, Encampment, The Knowing, The Migrant Rain, Falls in Reverse, and Unlike the Rest. Yeah, you can take your seats. Thank you very much. And we will give you now the moment that you have been waiting for. The winner of the 2025 Toronto Book Award is Maggie Hellwood for Encampment, Resistance, Grace, and an Unhoused Community, published by Coach House Books. Maggie, we'd love for you to come up and say a few words. Thank you for all your work. I don't know if you can hold this and talk at the same time.
This isn't my book. This book belongs to a whole lot of people, and some of them are here tonight. And please, if you want to, please come up. Anybody from the encampment who wants? Yes. I want to thank the jury for making an extremely brave choice. And I want to say to the City of Toronto, this does not let you off the hook in any way whatsoever. I said this book belongs to many people, and some of them are here, and a lot of them have died. Life expectancy on the streets is very short. So the only other thing I want to do while I'm here is to read the names of some of the people that we lost over the course of the events described in this book. A.J. Ballard, Luc Boulien, Brandon, Deshawn Shannon Brooks, Mama, Robert Frederick Carson, Summer Cowan, Ace, Selim Essen, Faye, Ashton Darnell Pikachu Gray, Joey Brown, Chris Hassan, Iceman, Charlene Lee, Dean Lissowick, Dawn Turtle Motrick, Javier Mason Anthony Osborne Hofstede, Kevin Parker, Shirley Thompson, Dave Vasey, also Leroy Granville Francis Niles, and David Gordon Helwig. The bodies are all accounted for. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for all the work that you do beyond your writing, and thank you to all our authors and the work you do above and beyond what you've written in your work. That is a great year of Toronto stories. Congratulations again one more time to Maggie and all of the finalists. for your contributions to Toronto literature. Just before we head off, the City of Toronto would like to thank all of its partners, the Toronto Public Library, Word on the Street, and the Arts and Letters Club. Let's give all three a nice round of applause, please. And a big thanks to you for coming out tonight. We hope to see you again next year. I'm Ali Hassan. We'll see you again. Thank you.